Welcome and standing by. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode. During the answer session of today's call, you may press star followed by 1 to ask a question. Today's conference is being recorded. If you have objections, you may disconnect at this time and turn the call over to Irene Iher. You may begin.
Of CDRH's Office of Communication and Education. On June 27th, the FDA announced the Digital Health Innovation Action Plan and the launch of the agency's software pre-certification pilot program. The FDA recognizes that we need a regulatory framework that accommodates the distinctive features of digital health technology, its promise, its user interface, and the compressed commercial of new product introductions. The Innovation Action Plan provides details and timelines for our integrated approach to digital health technology and implementation of the 21st Century Cures Act. Today, Bugul Patel, Assistant Director for Digital Health in CDRH, will present an overview of both the Digital Health Innovation Action Plan and the Software Precertification Pilot Program. Following Bukul's presentation, we will open the line for your questions related to the information provided in the presentation. There are other center subject matter experts to assist with the Q&A portion of our webinar. Now, I'll give you Bukul.
Thank you, and thank you everybody for joining the webinar. I'm excited to talk about the action plan and the pilot program. But before we do that, I want to cover 3 things today, and I'll touch on that briefly to start. One is how we got here, all the work we have done so far, all the policies that we have put in place, and how we are adapting and how we are taking that into consideration as we move forward. 2 is the details of the action plan of what we are going to do to allow ourselves and meet the requirements of the law that we just got on 21st Century Cures, and most importantly, share with you the concept of the pre-certification idea, or the paradigm we are trying to shift towards that will allow people with evidence in organization as well as culture of quality to advance and have products available to the patients in the U.S. With high quality. So how do we sort of do that? Try out. We're announcing the pilot program. We announced the pilot program last week to talk through how we can, or learn how we can sort of best design the program with the help of those pilot participants. So let's take you through the slides here to briefly about what we got here. Most importantly, you all know the this of digitalization that's happening is affecting everybody across the spectrum, and it's really moving healthcare from the clinic to the patient. And as we sort of dive into how computing power, sensors, and connectivity, along with software, is really changing how healthcare is being viewed, it's important for FDA to take a pragmatic approach and allow these technologies to be available in the marketplace. And the next few slides I'm going to share with you is really talks about how we have been approaching these. We at FDRH care about patient-centered healthcare. We also want to bring trust in innovative technologies to all the stakeholders in the healthcare. And finally, we want to partner, and our pilot program is an indication of how we want to partner with our customers. I'm using the word customers on purpose. They all stakeholders, including patients, including providers, including caregivers, and developers who can get us to a digital future-ready state. Think about how we are approaching our policies. We look at the risk-based approach as a fundamental, which really takes to this functionality focus, which means that we really are agnostic about how small or how big a product looks, but really focused on what the product does. It allows us to give and allows everybody to have independence from the technology that's being developed at a very fast pace. It allows platforms to evolve over time and promote innovation in that area where technology is moving at a very, very fast pace. Part of our thinking has always been we want to be narrowly focused, which we'll continue to focus on high-risk technologies, but necessarily focus on all technologies, which allow us to sort of get to patient promoting engagement and protecting patient safety. So this is the paradigm we've been thinking since 2013, and we published some guidances and which sort of outlines our policy, our thinking, and looking at how we would approach from a digital health perspective and how they have now become foundational in how in what PDRH considers higher risk and what PDRH considers to be lower risk, and taking a very pragmatic approach towards overseeing them with very practical and an integrated approach. This just unilaterally within the U.S., but we have also been leading efforts on the international front to create a framework with our international partners, regulators across the globe, to come up with a framework for software as a medical device. Actually, will level set the approach that every regulator takes across the globe when such technologies are available to the patients. So we are working through that, and they have also become a foundational building blocks for how we will approach and how we are thinking about it. Take another step on from a different perspective. 20th Century Cures codifies some of the policies we had in the U.S. This is a slide I showed you before, the guidance that we put out, and it now codifies those policies. When we look at what 21st Century Cures does, it really takes our guidances on mobile medical apps, our guidances on medical device data systems, and look how we would approach electronic patient records as we described in the Federal Health IT report, and verifies that we will be providing a lot more clarity on that aspect. But as we do that, we have to look at what's happening in the current situation. It is rapidly evolving in front of us, and what we want to share with you today is we have taken all these aspects and now, one second. There's a technical difficulty. We'll just continue now. If you take where we are in our situation, we have a current regulatory paradigm, and we have unique aspects of digital health. We know we have been regulating products on a risk-based for the longest time. We have a certain capacity to review products. We all know that the current paradigm is best suited for products we regulate today. When we match it with some of the unique aspects of digital health, especially in the software, seeing the development timelines and the fast pace of innovation and iterations that happen have changed and brought different challenges and considerations for us to think about. We also seen emerging issues such as cybersecurity and interoperability push and pull the need for us to sort of be more transparent, at the same time be more secure. That the potential for increase in volume of applications have increased, and you think about how software is being developed, how soon software can change over time. It really begs for us to think about how can we add it differently, and what paradigm should we think about that actually best suits for seeing software in the space that rapidly evolves and changes at the same time. In software, there is a need for changes to happen, and how can the regulatory paradigm enable that? When you all together, when you take the work that we have done so far, the work that we have done in the national front, you consider the current 21st Century Cures and the modifications to the FD&C Act, and take into unique aspects of digital health, really talk things to the action plan, which tells us how, talk three things. We will be defining our policies and guidance of how 21st Century Cures apply, how the international framework sort of can be considered as part of our foundation And most importantly, we want to take into account, we want to look at what the new streamlined pathway really looks like as we move forward. The last part I will speak on is a little bit about building bench strength. As we have said it many times, FDA needs to be at a place where we can actually have a very strong conversation and a parallel conversation when we have submissions in-house. At the same time, we want to be in line with the technologies that are evolving. So we want to build bench strength with the technical expertise. In fact, as we launch into the pilot program, which I'm going to share the details in shortly, we also will be announcing in the next few weeks the launch of the Entrepreneurs in Residence program. We'll talk about that a little bit more further. But let me go into the details of how we're refining policies and what we're providing guidances on next. Two big things we're doing. We're taking existing policies, matching it up with the 21st Century Cures Act, and effect of those act on those guidances, and we'll be updating those guidances. But if we do that, we will publish interpretation guidance that we plan on publishing by the end of this year. We'll allow everybody to comment on how we are interpreting the 21st Century Cures, being transparent in that way, and then making changes to those finalized policies that we have. That's happening this year. Early next year, in Q1 of 2018, we'll be putting two major guidance. One is on clinical decision support software that reflects the intent of the 21st Century Cures Act, as well as our review and our oversight on products that commingle portions are regulated and portions that are unregulated. We call that as multifunctionality, but taking a look at how we would approach that and seek comments for that as well. So we'll be publishing two draft guidance in 2018 and one guidance in 2017. We also are looking at the effect of 21st Century Cures and effect on the regulations that we have in place, and we'll be updating those as well. So you see there's a lot of activity going to happen between now and Q1 of next year. We want to make sure that you all are aware of, and that's covered in our action plan. Share to the part where I think most of you guys are eager to listen to, where we need to go from here on. I think it's important to take into account what we've done so far, what we have in front of us, and get to a place where it really makes sense for oversight to be in a place where it's in line with how software is being developed. It's in line with global regulations and regulators that are aligned to the foundation of principles that we have been working on, and aligned to practices and real-world experiences that folks use and experience and practice day to day. What does that look like? This is to this fundamental shift in how we would want to oversee technologies. And in this, we've been overseeing technologies one product at a time. Somebody brings in a submission, we look at the product and the intended use, and we give them clearance or approval, or they market a product. We need to shift to a fundamentally different approach where we would base the marketing authorization on a demonstrated culture of quality and organization excellence. Moving to a model where a company-based streamlined regulatory approach for software as a medical device that relies on a demonstrated culture of quality and organization excellence. So folks must be thinking, what does that mean? So let me just take you one step higher than that sentence and share with you how we are thinking about it. And just to share, this is a concept and a starting point for us to work through in the pilot, but it becomes the foundation for how we would approach in the pilot itself. A company that is pre-certified or goes through and proves or demonstrates the culture of quality and organization excellence would avail themselves to a pre-cert level. And we don't know answers how many levels, but that's something we'll figure out. Once they've become certified, then on the risk of the product they're making or the products they're making, they could afford it a straight-to-market pathway or through a short, streamlined pre-market review pathway. Optimize that because software is so connected and is so connected to the end users, we would ask those things that go through this pathway to collect or on how their users actually interact with their products. And something that is available for software, a unique feature that's not available elsewhere all the time. So how do we sort of leverage connectivity, and how do we sort of leverage sort of the compute power to understand how the product really works in the marketplace? We hope it would allow people to start at a very low level who are not experienced or who are trying to enter into the marketplace and learn more about their product and collect more evidence as they real-world use evidence in practice and use it as a basis to substantiate higher-level claims, so to speak. The paradigm we're looking at, and that's what we call as real-world data collection. How we need to figure out together as a pilot how best we sort of do this. So the concept is a starting point, and take this to the next level as we start more into the pilot program itself and learning from everybody. Let me dive a little bit deeper into what we mean by culture of quality and organization excellence. So for organization excellence or culture of quality and organization excellence is an ability to get a SAM software as a medical device to market faster. We also want that software to iterate based on real-world experience. We think that the world of software is actually better for public health, where things can be corrected and fixed based on how products are performing in real world. We want people who participate in this program to have an excellent regulatory experience and have great predictability. We are hoping that companies will strive for excellence from on. We also are hoping to our objectives of promote high quality and effective innovation in this space. And we want to create a very transparent PreCert program that would actually help understand where to stand and what they want to improve on, what they need to improve on. So to start with, imagine the CQOE as balanced scorecard elements, as you can see here, starting with the 5 basic tenets: safe patient experience, deliver highest quality products, clinically responsible, being cyber responsible, and being proactive versus reactive. These are the common things that FDA has always been wanting to impress upon, and they have been impressed upon through our current regulations. So it should not be something new that we are expecting, but rather a more holistic way of looking at it from the intent of the regulations than actually the regulations itself. So how are we thinking about this? And demonstrate through the lenses that they have within their organizations and how they're actually managing their organizations through key performance indicators or other similar measures through their organizational perspective, through their customer perspective. Are they learning and growing, and do they have internal processes that can actually provide some holistic aggregate key performance indicators to suffice those key core scorecard elements? That's what we're looking for. I think this is a very high-level concept and something we would want to flesh out further. The fundamental idea here is to take one of the elements and look at it from multiple perspectives, just like you would do in a business, just like your CEOs would do in a business, where they would actually look for how the business is performing, not just by looking at one portion of their business, but all portions of their businesses, and seeing what the outcomes of their processes that they have and the infrastructure they haven't put in place. So that's the premise. So I'm sure you guys will have a lot of questions on this. I'm sure we'll learn a lot through this process itself, but it's a concept that we want to start from and take it to the next level. All the bullets on the slides, but this is a snapshot of what we want to achieve or want to desire to have when we have a program like this. We want to enable modern and efficient regulatory framework it should be easy to follow process. These are sort of the constraints we are putting on ourselves, and we are putting on us as a sector and a community to make sure that the highest quality products are available. Be sure that it's repeatable and it's scalable for organizations of any size. It should be available that the program should be that it learns and adapts over time. And to that effect, let's share this other picture with you, where we think not only as you, as makers of this, the software, makers of digital health tools, learn about how well your product is performing with real-world data, real-use data, you understand also how effective is our program. So we're going to create our own feedback mechanism to how turn best and perhaps modify over time what's the right metric, what's the right KPI, what's the right scorecard element, what are the decision points that we need to sort of adapt over time, create a system that is not only sustained for today but also sustained for tomorrow. And that's really the vision we have here to make sure that our regulatory paradigm also stays current on an ongoing basis as technology evolves. Please, but I'm going to talk about the component where we do want to take the knowledge and the learnings that we have, that we put out through guidance documents, and create a development toolkit similar to a software development toolkit that's available for software developers, to create a regulatory development toolkit to help new entrants, but also folks who are trying to create software solutions or digital health solutions in a space that may require many perspectives, or that may require other considerations. Now, we do have those considerations today in different formats, in different guidances, may not be easily available or easily accessible for people, or know where to look for. So hoping this regulatory development kit is a control-based system that can allow people to ask the right questions, look for right guidances that FDA has put out in the space of software and digital health, and guide them to the process so there is clear understanding how can make a product and be successful in the marketplace. So to sum, the concept itself has three components: FDA cert that allow this company base, that will give us the trust in the companies making these products, and having that trust would allow us to avail a fair, streamlined pathway to market. A regulatory development kit that will get companies started off in the best standing and successful. And lastly, for the FDA to learn and adapt a regulatory program that actually stay current in technology and aspects sort of evolve over time. To actually take this concept to the next level, announced the pilot program last week. And the pilot program is an interesting approach, a slight departure from what somebody would think about as a pilot program. Give me a second, we have some technical difficulties. I just want to make sure that we probably not seeing my slides. Okay. Previously, I'm just going to back up one slide. I mean, left over the building blocks of the concept itself, but taking us to our pilot program, what we want to really do is sort of try to understand the details of the program and of the concept that we have laid out, and try to build it with folks who are going to be participating. But at the same time, you should be not looking at the only participation as the only folks who are going to be helping us build this. I want to encourage everybody to sort of provide their input and knowledge as we sort of move through. Let me share how we are scoping the pilot, what we're going to do, and what we're expecting people to do from here onwards. The scope of the pilot, we are trying to limit it to software as a medical device itself, where we can say that manufacturing is developing or planning to develop software as a medical device, defined by the international community and IMDRF, is the definition we're going to start looking at. What does it mean? It means that software, when it has its own medical purpose as defined in the FDA&C Act, is really what we're looking for. It doesn't really matter where it's located, and we've been discussing this concept for the longest time. What we don't want to include is things that are embedded in controlling medical devices like infusion pump or a cardiac pacemaker. The kind of software is not what we're talking about. We are starting with really something really very small. Is software medical device itself. Now, there are some criteria, and you can look at the guidance document that the people that we have published, but really want to take a look at that scope and sort of taking to the and we can select those pilot participants from that group of those developers. At software function that's not excluded from medical device definition. So really, you want to make it relevant to the community we're looking at. So how to run the pilot? I can see there are many unanswered questions. There are many things that we need to still figure out, and we're looking at how we would go forward with this. The PreCert pilot is a mechanism for us to learn. We have a concept which shared with you. It's at a high level, and we take it to inform the regulatory program. We should take the few candidates or the participants or input from others to test it, and further evaluate. And as we iterate down this path towards the paradigm, how we try on the first few candidates, we'll apply it to the next few candidates, and sort of iterate and use those learnings back towards building and answering some of those questions that may be open right now. So looking at gathering input from others who may be selected, because I totally understand that having a participant pool of 9 may not be fully reflective, but we're working towards an event in January of next year, early next year, to bring this conversation back in a public forum that we can discuss all the details and sort of learning so far. So what do we want to learn? There are things we know and we have questions for. How do we sort of do that? What are the pre-certification components? How do we bridge industry's measures to benchmark CQOE elements? If people are doing that, we want to learn from that. We anticipate in the early parts of iteration, we would probably benchmark that. Also develop and evaluate how to measure the criteria for those benchmarks. And from there, we'll develop the certification correlated to that with the risk type of the software they're making. We all want to look at those boxes where we have questions on what decision criteria we could use, and we would develop that. If there was a review and streamlined review needs to happen, what that look like? What does the content look like? What does the method look like? Should we still look at paper submissions or submissions of that kind, or should we look at some other artifact? And very last, and more questions to follow, is what does it mean to collect market data? How? What's expected? I think we need to work on all those things, and we want to work with all of you to sort of towards that, to answering these questions. And I can share with you that this is a lot of work, and it cannot be done only by FDA. And I think we need to work together to sort of figure out how best we can sort of learn together and create a system that works for everybody. So before we launch into the pilot program, I wanted to just logistically say we are opening applications now, and we'll continue to sort of get applications until we suffice the criteria that we laid out in our Federal Register notice. I won't read through all the selection qualities, but really what's shared in our Federal Register is about we could take applications, or we would consider them who provide a statement of interest and expect to be part of the learning process along with FDA and with the stakeholders to sort of go forward with it. Some of the things that we are thinking about as characteristics of folks who are part of the pilot program. We would want to have large and small organizations, so we understand how a large organization works and a small organization works. We want to get perspectives from our traditional medical device industry, as well as perspectives from folks who are not traditionally in the medical device industry, but are thinking about entering this market. We want to learn from best in class and folks who are trying or looking at developing low, high risk software as a medical device. Details about what we expect the participants and CDRs to work collaboratively with. We'll work together, and the point of this slide is to just share that we are going to work together on how we can determine the answers to this question. And we will evolve as we iterate through the process itself, but really what we want to do is learn from what's happening best, try to how can we actually meet our goals and the goals of the program and oversight, and how can we sort of figure a way that will actually be helpful for everybody. To summarize, the pilot process itself, applications are starting now. We will know more than 9 participants and the program elements along with the pilot participants. If you're interested, they should email statement of interest with subject line PreCert pilot, take interest, FDA PreCert pilot at fda.hhs.gov. I want to also emphasize one thing. Even though the participants are only 9, we are also looking for input. It means that folks may have their own ideas and thoughts based on the concept, and we can go from we take those concepts and input it into our program itself. How do we sort of provide that a channel for that input is also important. So into effect, the Federal Register docket that we have created for the Federal Notice that we published last week, a great avenue for folks to submit their input to the program itself and components of the program as we move forward. You should look forward for continuous communications on this, and we'll be updating our website on how we're progressing. We'll be as transparent as we can, making sure that in the participants' confidential information is protected. To I want to share that is an important first step for us to explore the elements of the program. It is our continuous effort to be pragmatic, balance the benefits and risk of digital health products. But most importantly, we want to collaborate and be a partner in this learning that we will have going forward to actually build a program that will be best suited for this fast and evolving technology space that actually holds the promise for being healthcare for the U.S. I would just turn it back over to Irene. But if you have questions, this is probably a time to ask questions. Irene, back to you.
Cool. Operator will now take questions from participants.
Thank you. I'll begin the question and answer session. If you would like to ask a question, please press star followed by 1. You're prompted to record your name. To ask your question, you may press star followed by 2, and press star followed by 1 to ask a question. In a moment, please, for our first question. Timothy, your line is open. Go ahead with your question.
Thanks for taking my question. I was just wanted to ask about how a burden we expect in site visits inlet, and also how often we would be providing any metrics or aggregated information, just so that teams could try to understand what they'd be signing up for.
For that question, I think we're looking to be as open and sharing or sharing the information as possible. But in fact, for example, if you're one of the first few candidates or first few participants, we'll probably have multiple site visits and just not to revisit old things, but more about as we learn more, we may have missed something in the first go-round, but I learn mentally what we may have missed in the first thing. So I expect a few for the first group, but should be less of a burden for a site visit, and it may not necessarily have to be a site visit, and things could be answered remotely as well. So that's one way of looking at it. And working with participants to see what works best. Intention is not to disrupt the organizational operations, more about a program that reflects what you guys are doing.
Okay, thank you.
Give a moment, please, for our next question. Comes from Penny Levin. Your line is open. Go ahead with your question.
Well, that was my question. Thank you.
And it comes from Diane Johnson. Your line is open. Go ahead with your question. Please state your company name.
Diane Johnson from Johnson & Johnson. Bakul, I was hoping you could provide some insight on kind of the difference between what these site visits would be like versus an inspection, and is there any possibility that involvement in the pilot would lead to some sort of compliance action?
Thank you for the question, Diane, but let me just share with you, this pilot program is purely on products that are not products that are being done or being designed and worked on right now, but more reflective of the company itself. I think if there are any issues, we will probably discuss with you ahead of time, but the whole idea is we want to pick companies who know they're really good at doing software. So businesses who are excellent at doing making software and managing software, validating software, and designing them is really what we want to learn from. There may be some issues that come out, but I think it may be beyond the pilot. But it's more about the pilot's more about learning rather than compliance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Comes from Raheel Atta. You may ask your question. Please state your company name.
Hi, from Vigo Health. Thanks so much for the call, Bakul. Wanted to get some clarification on what information needs to be input on the statement of interest.
So as we talked earlier, I think I can just share with you. I'm back to the slide. If you can see it, statement of interest ideally would sort of show some history on how best you've been managing, developing, and doing good software development, as well as validating, as well as managing customers. So that'd be one of the things. If you're using any kind of KPIs or other measures, would you be able to share with us, or in the spirit of learning, and how do you think about from real world post-market data collection? And those are the kind of things we sort of looking for. And we didn't provide a format, and that was on purpose because we anticipated folks may actually have different ways of doing the same thing, but we wanted to really learn what's best. We would want to get an impression from your statement of interest that you are excellent, and one of the key factors is the size of the company that you're representing. We're looking for both small and large, but so we all learn from the best. So if you impress in your statement of interest how good you are and sort of have some artifacts that help us with that understanding or demonstrating that would be very helpful.
And will there be any indication on or what like the risk of the device? Should that also be included?
I mean, go back to our criteria. I think if you think this is a kind of risk profile you're working with for the software you're developing, I mean, I expect you to get it perfect, but I think it'll just give us an idea of the profile your company is sort of meeting. So it would be very helpful. I mean, this is a section, if you think about this as a criteria that we are using to sort of select participants, and we want to make sure that we have diversity in this different axes.
Thank you.
Question comes from Jaron. You may ask your question. Please state your company name.
Jaron Qualcomm. You mentioned really briefly the entrepreneurs in residence. Is that going to be a part of PreCert, or is that separate, or are they going to be somehow aligned? And what exactly will the entrepreneurs in residence be? Can you give a little more detail about it? Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you. The Entrepreneurs in Residence program is really using, bringing in experts from the industry or people who are experienced in this industry to work side by side with TA staff as we are learning through this to sort of help us guide and build this program together. It's neither separate, neither part of this program, but it is one of the infrastructure that we think is necessary for us to be successful in having a program that sort of reflects, guides us through the process.
We'll take
The next question then comes from Tim Klein. Your line is open. You ask your question. Please state your company name.
Tim Johnson & Johnson. Does the agency ever think in the long term having this program be something that would be a public database such other companies would know, oh, these 10 companies, these 30 companies are now pre-certified, akin to what the agency does with establishment registrations or other sort of more regulatory requirements? Are you able to speak about, the agency's future vision here at all?
I think this is a good start. We take all those best practices and be transparent of how we move forward. But really, we want to make sure that we are transparent in the fact, and it actually helps the goal of striving for excellence and how to go forward, keeping in mind protecting the company confidential information as well. So yes, I think that's a great suggestion, and I would encourage everybody to continue to suggest those things because, as you know, we have to balance the confidential information with the transparency that we want to make sure that exists. Now, we may or may not use the existing tools, but those mechanisms of being transparent will definitely be considered as we go along. And something that we will learn what parts we need more open on and what parts we can't be more open on.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Question comes from Arja. You may your question, and please state your company name.
I'm from M5. I had basically two short questions. One is, are you also going to look at companies outside the U.S. for the program? And in addition, when you say prior experience in software development, is experience outside healthcare also accounted?
Yeah, outside healthcare, that's what I mean by we would look for people who are traditional medical device manufacturers or IVD manufacturers. In addition to, we want to make sure that we also get people who are traditionally not really in med tech, but maybe outside of the med tech sector. In terms of the country location, we will look at applicants who are owning on this commercially distributing the products in the U.S. But I'll go back to my first principle: is we want to learn and we want to make sure that we use the diversity of the participants as wisely as possible, balancing our resource needs and other things that is reflected in those 9 participants. But not to say that people outside of those 9 participants can also learn on their own and even put that input to us in other ways.
Sure, thank you much.
Thank you. From Robert Ezo. You may ask your question. Please state your company name.
Actually, the question has been answered. Thank you.
The question then comes from Ted. You may ask your question. Please state your company name.
Ted Smith with Revon Systems. Just a question on whether you'll be looking to related industry standard certifications as part of this process. For example, Revon Systems, we apply with high trust certification. Are there any of these external certification standards that you think would be applicable or related to what you're trying to do?
Standards are one way to measure and understand excellence. Fundamental shifts we are trying to make is we are trying to allow folks to demonstrate in their own what their excellence standard measures are. So how do we? I think that's the balance we need to learn through and make sure that we get there. Now, for some things like cybersecurity, certain best practices have become a norm, have been standardized and being used by everybody, and those are perfect ones to use standards. In other cases, some of those measures may differ from project, from product to product, or company to company, and we want to make sure those flexibilities are there. Still focusing back on the slide that I shared earlier about concept, those key elements of safe patient experience, high quality, clinically responsible, etc.
Great.
Thank you. Question comes from Howard Look. You may ask your question and please state your company name.
Hi, Nicole. This is Howard from Tidepool. Thank you so much for this great webinar and this program. I'm really excited about it. I have 3 quick questions. The first is, how are you thinking about visits for teams that are largely distributed and don't have facilities in the traditional sense? Is it important to meet the team, or is it really more important to understand how they build its software? My second question is about the time commitment for participants in the pilot program, especially for a small company. I'm curious how much time you would expect us to be part of this. And then the third is, are there any thoughts on encouraging organizations to publish how they do things, whether it's source code or software quality system processes, of encouraging participants to share their best practices with the rest of the industry?
Great questions and suggestions, and I'll try to remember your top question. I think you're spot on, and I think it reflects back to, I think, the very first question Tim had is what does a site visit mean and what does that look like? So I think it's important to sort of keep in mind that a visit may not necessarily be a physical site visit. It could be a remote. It doesn't have to be. And I go back to the premise that we understand how folks manage and maintain for themselves those key elements, card elements that we pointed out earlier. That's the question. I hope I'm remembering the second question. Can you remind me what was the second one? I forgot already.
What do you expect the time commitment to be for participants in the pilot program?
I do not have a great answer for you in terms of exact number, but I think one of the key commitments we're looking for is we're willing to work with us to sort of develop this. And for a small company, it may not be a lot because there may be not much to think about. We already have those things, and that may be readily available. And in other cases, it might be much longer. So I don't know, and I think that's one of the discovery and that we'll have to sort of figure out as we move forward. We don't want this pilot to be multi-year projects. We want to make sure that we learn quickly. We report back in early 2018 and then iterate from there. So that's how we are thinking about it.
And how do companies to publish their software or their processes as part of participating?
The level of transparency will differ for every company, and how to sort of move forward in the type of transparency will also differ. And I think somebody previously asked, would be carrying the CQOE score if that's the way we end up going to give people an understanding of what that means, or it's a mark, or whatever that level we end up doing. We would want to make it as transparent as possible. Now, whether FDA does it or somebody else does it, it's still to be determined. But I think this is where you're heading, and I think the need you're pointing out is if the way to sort of do this better and in a more efficient way, we'll be looking for those methods.
Thank you.
Thank you. And this comes from Carlisle. You may ask a question and please state your company name.
Hi, it's Carlisle from Puma Systems. Thank you for this webinar. I think the thinking you put into it is really outstanding. So thank you. You mentioned specifically that this is aimed at software as a medical device and not at embedded controller stuff, yet it's patient-centric. So almost every application that's patient-centric, I see a combination of embedded control and stations and networks and cloud computing. To give some examples as to what projects would be eligible and perhaps which projects would not.
I'll give you a couple examples. I gave a couple examples of some projects that would not be, like in infusion pump embedded software, or PreCert embedded software, or some other products that we currently regulate as embedded controller software would not. But anything that does take patient information and does advanced analytics and a diagnosis or a cure or a recommendation, part of the definition of software as a medical device in the guidance that we put out, and meets that definition of a medical device, something that we would want to consider. So something that takes an EKG waveform and now detects a cardiac condition that they diagnose, or you take something else and diagnoses a disease or a condition would be something that we would be interested in looking at. One thing to keep in mind is maybe products that use a computing platform's peripherals and collect that data and then does analysis. You would consider those that just uses generic peripherals or generic sensors, input devices or output devices to make a medical purpose engine. We would be considering them as part of the pilot as well.
Well, they're considering part that an IV pump in the future will be the opposite of what you said. It will be an embedded controller. It'll be it'll be a network. It'll be a cloud computing amalgam. Pump isn't. You mentioned patient centricity, and if patient is the center, the pump is not in the center of the universe. It's no longer standing alone. It's part of the patient-centric.
Yeah.
So it gets a little confusing as to.
Yeah. So just to give you a perspective and not to disagree with you, but I totally agree with you where you're going with this. But for us to learn from a small, and we have to crawl before we walk, and this is exactly what we're doing. Is we're starting with a very small scope, with a very small, narrow sort of perspective, and hopefully those things will be transferable to other areas as it evolves. So that's what we're looking at, and it's not because this program will be exclusive, but it's more about can we start here and can we learn in this fastest moving area that we know of today, and apply it eventually down the road for other software.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Natan, you may ask your question, and please state your company name.
Hi, Natan here, coming from 4C. My first question is, I mentioned that we look to collect real-world post-market performance data. I just want to know if you could explain a little bit more about what kind of data you look to collect. And a short question is, you mentioned you're looking for companies with existing records, and I was wondering whether that means that you do already have to have some sort of 510K clearance in place, or whether you're also looking for companies that are pre-510K.
I'll take the first one, is about real-world data collection and performance data collection. It's really, that's a concept we've been sort of talking about a lot, where we said in the world of software, you are exposed to the user in a very intimately way that you can learn every action, how well your software works, and how well your software's output is used by the user. So we are encouraging people to collect that information while the software is in use, and that's what we mean by that. And you can imagine all kinds of user behavior, including clinical data or clinical evidence that can be generated or created based on that interaction. So that's what we're envisioning. And the second question, can you repeat your second question?
Sure. Second question is just about, you mentioned you're looking for companies with existing track records. Does that mean you're looking for companies that have pushed a bunch of products out into the market already, or are you open to working with companies that are, let's say, younger in terms of the product life cycle?
We are open to companies at all stages, but going back to is if we can learn, and that's why we are talking about people may not be necessarily in medtech, but they may be in an adjacent sort of market. They have a good track record in other products that may not necessarily medical devices. That learning would be very beneficial for us to sort of take it. So we are not letting people who have 510Ks or not. It's more about making sure that we are looking at people who know exactly how to develop software, how to maintain it, actually manage to those elements that I mentioned before.
Thank you.
The question comes from Larry Rubin. Your line is open. Please company name.
Hello, my name is Larry Rubin. My company is called CareLink, and my question is, and it is connected to the last question that was just asked, and it is, if a company is in the middle of doing clinical trials, is that something that can also be used as part of the existing track record or as a key performance indicator?
Not fully understanding your question, but I'll try to attempt to answer it. Ask the question that your company is in clinical trial.
Software product, yeah.
If you're looking at a product, so this meet the criteria of whether you're planning to develop or developing. So you may meet that criteria of that first prong of what kind of companies we're looking at.
Okay, that's my question. Thank you.
Jeffrey Kendall, you may answer your question, and please state your company name.
Kendall with Coney here. Question is, would the FDA consider pilot participants that are collaborating together, such as a software development company and a traditional med tech product company, as a joint participant in the pilot program, or would those need to be individual representatives?
About this, and interesting you guys are asking all these tough questions, but the way I think about this is we're looking for a developer of software, so if it's made of two or more entities, I'm fine. It could be part of an organization, larger organization, that's fine too. But you have to sort of trust in a business unit or a group developing software. You can trust that the product they're making is of high quality, so they can avail straight to market or through a streamlined process. Is really what we're looking at that abstract level. So, I mean, the result of having two or more parties be part of a development organization may not include complexities, but that may be a good learning to have as well.
Great job on the webinar.
Thank you. Comes from Kelly Collins. You may your question and please state your company name.
Hi, Collins from In Touch Health, and I want to try to get some clarification in terms of how one determines if we qualify to be a possible volunteer for the program, in that going back to the Cures Act with the amended definition of software as a medical device, if those types of companies or products are no longer regulated by the FDA, will they fall under oversight of the Digital Health Unit?
Yeah, this pilot program is all about what falls within the definition of a medical device, and continue to sort of focus at things outside of our regulatory jurisdiction is really not in the purview of FDA, and we would not be looking for that space.
Okay. The question comes from Allison. Your line is open, and please state your company name.
Hi, this is Omiyama from Acknowledge Regulatory. I have clients that are really interested in the regulatory pathway of software and medical devices, but they, I mean, essentially, some of them are marketing as general wellness currently, and the goal is to their indications so that they will be regulated by FDA. We currently have 3 submissions that we'd like to send, but since news last week of this PreCert pilot program, we'd love to see if we are the right fit for this. Can we send in the pre-submission instead of or as our third pilot certification request, or if not, and if we don't get selected for it, can we still submit that pre-sub to your team?
Thank you for the question. Actually, that's one of the questions I'd received earlier. I think folks encourage everybody to apply, and I think it'll make our job difficult in selecting those 9 candidates, but I would not shy away from applying. So that's one. Two is if clients or if companies are already on a pathway to get a 510K and want to be in market, you should also look at this pilot as a learning opportunity for us. So it is going to be an iterative process where we are going to learn. So as a result of that, I think you will be exposed to some of the uncertainties. And if you're looking to be certain to be in the market now, I would encourage you to sort of be in engage FDA in the traditional way. But it's truly about a collaboration that we are looking for people who can help build this and be invested for the long run.
Will additional way be a de novo?
You would have to contact our, if it's a software product and a digital health product, I recommend you write digital health inbox, digitalhealth@fda.hhs.gov, and then get you the right pathway if you're regulated or not, and we get you in touch with the division to sort of have those discussions.
Thanks so much.
Question comes from Mark McCarty. You may ask your question and please state your company name.
With what was formerly known as Medical Device Daily and is now known as BioWorld MedTech. Thanks for taking the question. The previous questioner raised an issue that I'd like to get a little bit more information on. One assumes that this pilot program will be principally or entirely for Class 2 devices, as Class 1 devices are unregulated, and I don't imagine that a pilot program is really appropriate for a PMA-type application, not that I'm aware of any strictly software devices that have gone through the PMA channel anyway. But look through the Federal Register and I see successful de novo applications. When I see something in the way of a product code, I never see pro codes or de novos for software. And so I'm wondering, Michael, maybe if you give everybody just sort of a brief summary of the stances in which de novo application might be appropriate for a Class 2 device. And I don't know if you know how many pro codes there are for strictly software devices, but I haven't seen any. I'm curious as to whether all software as a medical device items are lumped together under the Code of Federal Regulations. I just haven't seen any indication that there's a diversity of pro codes or entries into 21 CFR.
Yeah, I think you're way ahead of all of us into the product codes and regulations, classifications for that matter. What we're starting off with is taking the framework that we put together and work together with our international partners and using this pilot program to really take a big step back and then determining what that pathways would look like. And that would result into a different, maybe perhaps the same way of pro codes or maybe a different way of characterizing these products with risk, with the levels and the assurance levels we need to sort of put into those buckets. So to be defined is the short answer, but I think that's one of the outcomes we want to learn as well on this pilot is like what is the right mechanism for us to categorize this in the U.S. law.
All right, thank you very much.
Well,
thank you. I will go ahead and the next question comes from Bill Levins. You may ask your question. Please state your company name.
Hi, Levins from Rock Health. I'm curious to know, we work with a number of companies in the space that are contemplating or already fall under, they believe, the software lifecycle defined in IEC 62304, quality management systems, ISOs as well. To what extent will this pilot program explore explicit adapting or extending these standards? Alternatively, I guess, is it the vision here that this pilot involves companies that believed to fall outside of those standards under current FDA regs?
I think we're looking for both, and we're looking at how best we can, rather than be conforming to a standard, we're looking at what people normally do best software, and then what are the practices. And in fact, you can imagine this as learning what people do best to or create a paradigm that actually recognizes what is best. So there are standards that have been created to what we know so far, yes, and can we validate that? Can we allow people to demonstrate that in a way that we all can get on the same page from the same intent and goal perspective for the elements I described? So I don't know if I answered your question, but yes, the answer is if where standards are available, we'll take them. But if people are following standards but are not to demonstrate in a very, very cohesive way, we would want to understand that. But I guess the bottom line is to understand the natural state of how best software is developed.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Our question comes from Barca. You may ask your question, and please state your company name.
Hi, my name is Barca from Next. I'm wondering about, hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. I'm wondering what about, companies that don't have a product yet but are in the development stage? Is that something, because they won't be able to collect metrics, right? I mean, if their product is not yet approved. So is that something that would still be qualified under this program?
So we are looking for an entire life cycle management experience, what people do. So it may not necessarily be have experience. I mean, the company may not necessarily have experience putting a medical device out to the marketplace, but if they have experience doing the same thing in other sectors, but now they're trying to apply those best practices in this sector, we would want to learn from that as well. So that's really what.
Just a follow-up on that, if the company is commercial in a Europe market or something, that would be acceptable in terms of collecting data or understanding that?
We would not shy away from people who have done good practices in other areas.
Thank you. And our next question comes from Jonathan. You may ask your question, and please state your company name.
Yeah, cool. Jonathan Helfgott from Stage 2 Innovations. Thanks again for leading such a wonderful collaborative opportunity. My question is, does acceptance and participation in the pilot program automatically enroll a company in the actual software pre-certification program, thus allowing the company to receive the potential benefits of the program, such as decreased submission content and or faster review of marketing submissions?
Like I'm repeating, Jonathan, I think this is going to be a learning process for us, rather than sort of definitively saying once you are in the program, you actually get an approval or a clearance. That's really not where we're heading. But I think if we partner with we right diversity in the 9 participants, we would love to sort of work together to place where we would understand what a streamlined submission would look like, what would mean post-market collection would look like. As a result of that, yes, there may be a pathway that we could say it does meet, clearance to go to market or not. So I think that's to be determined. But what I want to leave with is really trying to make this as a learning and iterative process that we can sort of all work together towards.
Thank you. At this retiring, I hear.
Thank you. I hear. We appreciate your participation and thoughtful questions. Presentation and transcript will be made available on CDRH Learn webpage at www.fda.gov training/CDRH-Learn. August. If you have no questions about today's presentation, please use contact information provided at the end of the slide presentation. As always, we appreciate your feedback. Following conclusion of the webinar, please take a short 13-question survey about your FDA CDRH webinar experience. The survey can be found at www.fda.gov/CDR webinar immediately following the conclusion of the live webinar. Again, thank you for participating. This concludes today's webinar.
In today's conference, we thank you for your participation. At this time, you may disconnect your line.